Committee unanimously recommends approval of Kisi Ejabeng as Ghana's next special prosecutor after he declared he does not intend to fill the shoes of former prosecutor Martin Amedu, who had accused him of being inexperienced and a surrogate.
There was a reference to heavy shoes of a named individual, which I'd like to state that I prefer to wear my own shoes. I'm not naive to assume that I'm coming to stop corruption. There is no way I can stop corruption. But I am going to make corruption very costly.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder, as well as Vodafone. Together we can. Now, Parliament's Appointments Committee has, in the last hour, unanimously recommended the approval of Kisi Ejabeng as Ghana's next special prosecutor. It follows his vetting earlier today. Now, the committee met after 4 hours after the vetting. And all members, we understand, decided to recommend him to the floor of the House for the necessary approval. We'll hear from the chairman of the Appointments Committee, Joseph Owusu, shortly. But first, Mr. Kisi Ejabeng came before the vetting committee, having been strongly criticized by his predecessor, Martin Amedu. He was emphatic he has no intention of filling Mr. Amedu's shoes.
Honorable Chair, there was a reference to heavy shoes of a named individual, which I'd like to state that I prefer to wear my own shoes, in the sense that I am my own man and I'm coming with my own experiences and professional training. In this quest, my conscience and my learning of the law are going to be my guide. My strategy is that, Honorable Chair, I'm not naive to assume that I'm coming to stop corruption. There is no way I can stop corruption. God himself will not even acclaim to that. But I am going to make corruption very costly, very, very costly to engage in terms of conflict of interest.
Chairman, you have just said that you make corruption costly, high-risk activity. How do you intend to work that?
Exactly.
Thank you.
I'm going to institute what I call pressure for progress. And in this quest, there will be a systemic review of all public agencies.
What was the word you...
I said I have termed it pressure for progress.
Pressure for progress.
Yes.
Very well. I thought it was a Latin word you spoke. I think get it out.
We'll hear more about what he meant by this approach, this strategy, this pressure for progress strategy, which he says is his own recipe for fighting corruption. We'll get into the details shortly. But the former special prosecutor had also accused Mr. Kisi Ejabeng of being a surrogate of an MPP-affiliated law firm, which was involved in a controversial Ejapa, a royalties deal. Now, Mr. Amedu had also questioned his experience based on his age. Well, Mr. Ejabeng did not hold back in dismissing these claims.
Whoever says I'm a surrogate of a law firm or implicates me in the Ejapa transaction clearly does not know me. Because if you know me, you wouldn't make such allegations. And so all these things that came up, I took it as coming from uninformed positions. Because I was not involved in the Ejapa transaction in any form or manner, by any stretch of the imagination, however fertile. As for relationships, as I just disclosed, the fact that I was so close to you at some point in our lives will not give you, or you not give me a free pass because of that relationship. And that is why I'm here. And if there is a matter, I'm not going to say because I know one person or the other, I'm going to give the person a free pass. I certainly will investigate. But the truth of the matter ought to be told. I wasn't involved in the deal. I was nowhere near it. Indeed, until it started coming up, I didn't even know what it was. For the record, that is the truth. And so I'm no one surrogate. As I said earlier, I'm my own man, and I prefer to wear my own shoes. If the law firm was named, it would have even been fair to me. But if you say I'm a surrogate of a law firm, clearly you don't know me. I run my own law firm. I've been running it since 2014 as a managing partner. I cannot be described as a surrogate of that law firm or any other law firm. Honorable Chair, that is my response.
Honorable nominee, what is your reaction to this? That you are too young and naive to be appointed to occupy a position such as the Office of Special Prosecutor. Are you, let me ask you this, are you experienced enough to occupy the position of Special Prosecutor?
Honorable Chair, first, the age. I turned 43 years on 2nd July, a few weeks ago. I qualified to be the president of this republic. I am age mates with the president of the French Republic. Indeed, you should forgive me for saying this. I'm a year older than the Minister for Justice and Attorney General. We were mates at the University of Ghana and Ghana School of Law. He is the Minister for Justice and Attorney General. There's no question about his age. Why then throw issues about my age? In terms of experience, as I stated much earlier, I was called to the bar some 18 years ago. I qualified to sit on the Supreme Court of Ghana. Indeed, I'm 3 years past the qualification for Supreme Court. I have taught criminal law, especially in the University of Ghana, for 15 years, continuously. I see, if I'm not mistaken, some of my former students around this table.
So, what really is his plan to fight corruption?
I'm going to institute systemic reviews of public sector institutions and the development of integrity plans. And here, this is what I intend to do. Why can't we have our own corruption perceptions index, for instance? Why can't I rank public sector agencies against each other? And at the end of the year, publicize the results as to which institution doing well. In that quest, if you are head of an institution and persistently your institution is drawing the short straw in terms of the perception of corruption from the point of view of experts, from the point of view of business people, you will set up. Because
Special Prosecutor, you're aware that you're being appointed to operate a particular law. Where will you draw your authority to be publishing perception, corruption, or corruption perception index of agencies? Where under the law will you have that your authority from?
The Act empowers me, if I'm given the nod by this House, to institutionalize risk assessment in respect of public agencies. And in doing risk assessment in terms of the activities of public sector agencies, it is a form of institutionalization of that systemic review of their activities. The Act also empowers me periodically, if I'm given the nod, to publish the activities of the OSP and the operations engaged in.
So that is the Ghana's new special prosecutor. I say new because, as we're now learning, in the last hour, the committee, the appointments committee, they've just met and they've decided to unanimously recommend his approval to the chamber, where the rest of the House will now have to debate that and endorse it. My parliamentary correspondent Joseph Gatpo joins us on the telephone line right now. Also joining me is anti-corruption campaigner Mr. Evans Mensah. Mr. Senator, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
And thank you for having me.
Joseph is in Parliament. Joseph, give us an update. We understand that the committee have already met.
Evans, obviously, this is a session that on both sides of the House, the majority and the minority side, they appear very much satisfied with the kind of responses that they got from Mr. Kisejabeng, both when it comes to his demeanor and the feedback that he gave in response to the questions. The feedback we're getting from members of the committee is that they were generally satisfied with all of that. In the last 2 hours or so, the committee usually meets anytime they finish any vetting process to then decide on what the way forward should be. And so they held that closed-door meeting, and from the details that we're gathering from that meeting, they came to the conclusion that they would go ahead and put together their report, and in that report, they would make a unanimous recommendation to the plenary that the House should go ahead and approve Mr. Kisejabeng's nomination as special prosecutor, so that then subsequently the president can swear him into office for him to then take over. And so we're expecting no other controversy, and Mr. Jose will make the point that, well, for people who were the vetting themselves, they can also judge how he performed during the various questioning that was put to him.
For the House to determine approval or disapproval of our recommendation.
Did he answer the questions to your expectations as far as today's session is concerned?
What were your own observations? My observation, my committee view is simply to recommend the House to approve the nomination or not. As to how other people value or view his answers, I'd rather leave it to them. I just stay within the rules and just make recommendations to the House.
We know you met in camera soon after. Has he been recommended by the committee for the necessary approval?
Yes, the committee unanimously agreed to recommend him to the House for approval.
Okay. Bank of Ghana collapsed.
And Joseph, unanimously, of course, that's the word of the chairman there. Unanimously means the minority side, the NDC side, all of them on the committee agree that he should pass. We know that on doing vetting itself, they had a lot of critical questions. But when he was first nominated, his name first popped up. I remember you speaking to a lot of the minority members who had some questions. It didn't appear that those had been a hindrance in their appreciation of what he could do and endorsing him.
Is that today's conversation with him at the level of the appointment committee is something that's at least from the MPs on the minority side inclusive that I've interacted with, they appear to be very much impressed with feedback. Like, he appeared to have given very interesting responses to the questions and spot on ideas, and a lot of them make the point that it's even more interesting that he's a relatively younger person who is going into the space to go serve as special prosecutor. One of the concerns that came up was he has a mandate for 7 years once he takes on the position, and he may probably have the opportunity to serve a second term. But one of the key issues that came up, and this question went to him directly from some of the minority MPs, that what does he intend doing with his firm once he goes on to serve as special prosecutor? You know, there's a firm that has done quite a number of jobs, including provided services for the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation and a number of other state institutions. And Mr. Kisejabeng responded and explained that he would for now step down as managing partner of the firm in question and then go serve as special prosecutor. He's hoping to build a world-class office as far as the office of the special prosecutor is concerned. And he says he's looking forward to returning to the firm once he's done with his tenure as special prosecutor. And Muntaka Mubarak, who is the minority chief, for example, made the point that it's a little concerning that he would go back to the firm and even make the point that he should probably be writing officially to the Speaker of Parliament to request the opportunity to be able to then hold on to a private job, even as he serves in that position as special prosecutor, because then one way or the other, Mr. Muntaka Mubarak makes the point that he will be benefiting from the firm by virtue of the fact that he is still an owner and he's still working within the legal space. But eventually, the minority MPs didn't hold him to that to a very large extent, and they say they look forward to him taking up the job and getting the work done.
Joseph, thank you very much. Mr. Senano, impressed too?
Well, so far, so very good. I think that the responses were very forthright. I like his style of refusing to engage with earlier criticisms that have been made and just to stick to the issues that he had been confronted with. And I like the fact that he was able to provide very good responses. I mean, when he compared himself to the president, he has a right to be president of this nation, in same age as the president of France and older than the current Attorney General. That tells you that's somebody who is thinking through the issues. So delighted that he's been able to go through this successfully, answering the questions. Happy that no further evidence relating or connecting him with a Japa or any other thing we are unhappy with was found. And so we wish him very well. I think that all of us should galvanize ourselves to support him, and we pray that he will deliver the results that Ghanaians expect.
Now, he gave us a sense of what he intends to do to fight corruption. One of the things he mentioned was to institute this, what the GII has been doing, the corruption index, as a way of, I guess, putting pressure on institutions to do better. But of course, he's also talking about conflict of interest and his approach to dealing with it. Well, what's your take on the approach that he spelled out today in tackling corruption?
Well, I was quite intrigued when he said our own corruption perception index, because to a lot of extents and purposes, the format for gathering the data and coming up with where we are is all local. It's not, I mean, the fact that the terminology and the model was developed externally by Transparency International has in no way influenced the data gathering and the results that we get here, which is then plugged into the international data to rank us. So if it's being done on the same model, he shouldn't be getting anything different. It's more or less he should just be relying on what exists. But I like the part where he says, let's do this in relation to public sector entities, so that there's some kind of competition and like a ranking, a league. And I think probably that's what he meant, kind of a league table. And let's see which public sector entities are doing well and which is not. And if you are the chief executive of an entity that is always at the bottom of the ranking, then you have questions to answer. And when there are objective criteria being used for this, obviously you will know which aspects of your services in relation to engaging the public they are worried about in terms of procurement or corruption or demands for bribes, etc. I think that is unique. And if he's able to work with stakeholders, because I don't think that the office by itself will be able to make this happen. You see, if he's able to work with stakeholders to get this in place, that would be a substantive step forward.
Let's come back to some of the controversial issues that Martin Mido had raised about him. The question was put directly to him. It's about his experience in this area of fighting corruption. His answer to that was simply, listen, I don't expect to eradicate corruption. I can't stop it. Do you agree with that view, though?
Well, all of us in the good governance and anti-corruption space understand that you can minimize corruption. You can't totally eradicate it. And there is a minimization that we expect so that we don't have it so rampant and then the sums of money are so draining on all of us. So that is in line with the evidence and research. I think the only part of that comment I wasn't too comfortable was when he said even God himself would not claim to something like that. I wish I left that out. But otherwise, yes, in terms of the logic, that's factual.
What do you think his biggest challenge will be in dealing with corruption? Because we saw Martin Amidu, so that's a template for us. And Martin obviously came with great gravitas, and yet the likes of yourself and other anti-corruption campaigners criticize his lack of output and evidence of work done in prosecutions. So how does he, Kissi Jabin, succeed where a colossus like Martin Amidu had failed?
I think one thing he may have on his side is youth and probably interpersonal skills to work collaboratively, where Mr. Amidu seemed to work in a silo and was apparently suspicious of everything around him, and that didn't augur well for all of us. And so that's one of the things he needs to think through carefully, how he can build a collaboration that enables him to access information and allows speedy investigation and prosecution of issues. That, for me, would be key. We know that corruption is a nemesis. It's very complicated, and the connections and the people involved, the levels, is hydra-headed. And so even those you may think are not involved may sometimes be tacitly involved. I think that he's going to need to have his ears on the ground and to build a network of informants and people who are willing to ensure that he succeeds. And I'm sure that, at least in civil society, he will find quite a number. He will have to do same in other sectors, including the media, in a way that allows him to synthesize the kind of information he needs to make good progress. I think that will stand him in good stead if he's able to have strong networking and information gathering skills, and with a team that is loyal, not there, as it were, to find out what he's doing and leak it to the corporates. I'm sure he'll be able to make good progress.
Mr. Senator, I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts. As I said, I know he's an anti-corruption campaigner. I want to bring in James Sagaga. He himself is a lawyer, a former Deputy Interior Minister, but is a member of the Appointments Committee, and he did a lot of the critical probing, bringing back some of the critical questions that Martin Amidu had raised about Kissi Jabin. And Mr. Sagaga, were you satisfied with the answers you got?
Yes, Evans, I was more than satisfied with the responses I got from Mr. Kissi Jabin, particularly with respect to the accusation labeled against him by his would-be predecessor, Mr. Martin Amidu. You remember Mr. Martin Amidu wrote an article in which Kissi was described as a surrogate of a law firm that belongs to Gabi Ochiridako. And so quite clearly that was very alarming. And so, but when he had the opportunity to respond to the accusation, he was very forthright. He said, look, he's not a surrogate of anybody. First of all, if he were a surrogate, he wouldn't have accepted the appointment in the first place. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt. He's going to assume office, and whether or not he is a surrogate would play out in the coming days. So we take him for his word. He says he's not anybody's surrogate. He believes strongly in the independence of the office that he's about to assume. And so we largely took him for his word. One other interesting point he made was about his age. Remember, some former members of parliament, notably the Honorable Evans Mensah, had argued that his age was not too good for him to be made special prosecutor. In Inus's estimation, Kisi was too young to become special prosecutor. But today he demonstrated very clearly that, look, most of the members of the appointments committee had actually been taught by him. The likes of Honorable Patrick Boama, Honorable Susu, Honorable Tampule, had all been taught by him at one point or the other at the what is now known as the University of Ghana Law School. He's 43 years of age, and then he cracked the joke and said, look, he's a year older than the Attorney General. And so if the powers of the Office of Special Prosecutor are derived from Article 88, which creates the Office of Attorney General, I mean, how can we say he is too young to occupy the position of Attorney General at the age of 43? So, in all, I think that Mr. Kisi Ajabeng deserves the support of all of us. We know the Office of Special Prosecutor is very new. It's relatively young. When Mr. Martin Amidu took over or started the office, we knew that he was not going to achieve results immediately. His main task was to ensure that the office was properly established. And he started on a good note. And so I expect that Mr. Kisi Ajabeng would continue from where Mr. Martin Amidu left. He would have to ensure that the office is properly grounded. Its various divisions are properly established. The investigative division of that office is properly established. Remember that the office had to make do without a proper investigations unit, and that often led to clashes between that office and the criminal investigations department. And one particular case comes in handy, the Charles Bisu case. You remember, Mr. Martin Amidu at some point had to write and criticize the CID for jumping the gun and drawing conclusions on a matter which had to do with Charles Bisu that he was seized with. I'm sure Mr. Ajabeng would have to ensure that the investigation department of that office is properly set up so that the theft wars that we saw unfold when Mr. Martin Amidu was in office can be a thing of the past.
So I guess he has your vote when it comes to the floor.
Yes. Actually, we
recommended his
vetting. He was approved by consensus by the committee, and so it is expected that when the committee's report is presented before the plenary, he would be passed unanimously.
Well, I'm grateful. That is Mr. James Agaga there. He is, of course, a member of the Appointments Committee, and that, of course, confirming that Kisi Ajabeng certainly is going to be Ghana's next special prosecutor. This is Top Story. News Night starts in a minute.
55, 78, 58, 70. Hey, Charlie, my network is really killing me.